So this is Wendell Phillips, one of the guys I've worked with for many years on Star Trek, among other shows. Prop guy. He likes building models. And well, Wendell, why don't you tell him a little bit about yourself?
Oh wow. Well, you can say, well, let's put it this way. I can now brag to my friends that I am a professional Trekkie. Uh, I started building stuff when I was it's about 8 years old. I'm 62, so do that math. I started out I have a degree in graphic design. That's how I started out. Always wanted to work in the movie industry, but my parents were like, "Oh, get a good job," which they defined as a corporate job. Had that, got laid off, and decided, you know what? I'm not working. I got to do something. So that's when I decided I'm going for the movie industry. Took a class video. Long story short, I got in the way every fanboy wants to get in. Went to a convention dressed as Geordie LaForge and met a a foreman of a prop shop. Got into a conversation. He says, "Hey, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know." And I said, "Fine, I need a job." And the rest is history.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people get started. Most people don't think it is, but it's like, yeah, that's kind of it. Especially if you're showing what you've built what you're showing.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I sent you some questions just so you'd know them.
Mhm.
But some of the questions I have for you here, most of these questions were from the internet, from people that are interested in prop making and so on.
Okay.
Uh, so here, let's start off with one of the questions. What was the first prop you ever made that inspired you to follow this career path?
Oddly enough, or maybe not so much, first one I did was a phaser. I was in college. I'd done a Starfleet uniform, and I needed a phaser to go with it. The funny thing is, the phaser was a squirt gun. The body was built out of a shoebox, a plastic shoebox, literally, because that's the only place I could find the plastic. It was completely inaccurate, but it squirted water, so it was fun. Later on, I bought one of those Star Trek magazines, and by this time, Next Gen was on. So I decided, I'm going to build one of those phasers. So I bought a piece of wood and sculpted it and followed the pictures as best I could, and bada bing, made another one. And this one looked a lot better. But yeah, like I said, I've been building models since I was 8. So between those things, uh, I built like I had a model of the Batmobile. I had a model of the Munster Coach, the Sea View. And of course the Enterprise and a Klingon battle cruiser. So all that stuff, I'm like, I'm doing all this stuff. Wouldn't it be great if I could get paid for it? I mean, that wasn't the motivation for building it. I just enjoyed it. It was just fun.
One of the other questions is a trick question, as you know. Who
Okay.
was your motivation to 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 be this creative, let alone uh, you know want to pursue this? Meaning, who inspired you to actually build things, and where did you draw your inspiration from?
Actually, I think I've never really thought about that, but I can answer it easily and say it was my father. First of all, he got me hooked on science fiction. Um, as case in point, he was in World War II. He was a Tuskegee Airman, or at least a mechanic for the Tuskegee Airmen. And I used to watch him fix the cars and fix stuff around the house. So that kind of gave me the idea that, okay, making and building stuff was the norm. In fact, he was the one who, the first few models I owned, he actually built them for me because, like I said, I'm 7, 8 years old. They didn't want me using that toxic modeling glue. So my father started building the models for me. So that got me interested. And as I got old enough and started building models for myself, and like I said, I got so much pleasure and enjoyment out of it. And in fact, so did my father, looking at what I built. Oddly enough, my mom kind of used to give me a hard time about it. Like, when are you going to stop building models? When it stops being fun. So far, it hasn't stopped being fun.
There you go. That's and that's the whole point. That's what I do it for. Is if it wasn't fun, I'd go work at a store or something.
Oh yeah. I couldn't go back, and I worked at a store. I couldn't go back to
Yeah,
get it.
I have to. I've worked in a lot of different jobs, but I keep coming back into the film industry to make stuff because I don't like to sit and be idle. I want to be doing something.
Yeah, I gotta add this, Mike. One of the proudest things I think I ever heard my father say. He was talking to one of my bosses, and he says, Wendell's mother and I used to nag him about these models he built. We never thought he would actually find a way to make a living doing it. I was just like, wow.
That right there, you know, it just shows that, having the determination to do what you want to do. There's a lot of people out there who want to be in the film industry,
Oh yeah.
but they're still making props on the side because they're like, I live in the middle of nowhere, and I'm building stuff that I love, but at the same time, I don't think I'd want to work in Hollywood. You know what I mean? Because you know as well as I do, we've been through this so many times. Is that it's at times it's not fun to be waiting for another job to show up,
Right.
or waiting for the check to show up. So so I there's a lot of people out there who appreciate that we've taken the initiative to go after this, but a lot of them also don't understand that when you're working on, like, for instance, Star Trek, it's an 8-day shooting schedule. You have a maximum of 6 days to do anything if you're lucky, and then after that, it's like, oh, it has to be here in the next 20 minutes. You know, I mean,
Oh, I got used to that.
oh,
I got
that's the
used to
point.
it.
And that's the point. Is some people out there don't think that we really could produce, like when we did the Bajoran rifles over the weekend.
Yeah.
Building, what was it, 17 or 18 of them over we got it Tuesday or a Thursday night at 7 o'clock at night, the design, and then Max and Bear were making the master, and then we had to start molding the parts as soon as those were all done. But people don't still don't can't grasp the idea that in within that 4-day period, we
You're
we
busy as hell.
we made the masters, we made the molds, we made the castings, and painted them all. And that was also making stunt copies. And stunt copies are harder to make than the regular ones.
Sometimes I mean, because obviously, well, as you know, and that's what our audience doesn't know, the rubber kicks off faster than the hard plastic. So
Right.
you're trying to pour rubber, and it's getting hard as you pour it into the mold. It's like, ah,
And you're trying to avoid bubbles and everything else.
you're getting
'Cause,
burnt.
yeah, among other, all that type of stuff. So I I think so what was your first experience in uh, in all of this? Meaning, when you finally got a job at a shop,
Okay.
what uh, what was your experience? What did you come in doing first?
Okay, I get it. I started out as a lab tech. So pouring molds. Here's a mold, here's some plastic. Pour. It wasn't until, but they didn't realize, they figured, oh, this guy's right off the street. He doesn't know what he's doing. In fact, no, this is the guy I met at the convention. Of course, he was working for us. He was the supervisor of the shop, but the person who actually hired me was, of course, his boss. Figured, okay, well, he doesn't know anything. He had another supervisor, Paul Schmidt. I'll just call his name. Hi, Paul. He's He turned me loose on a couple of things. And I think what surprised all of them was when we had to do some fiberglass layup. And they handed me the job. I went, okay. But what they didn't know was I had been experimenting with fiberglass for years. In fact, I had a car that I actually built a set of fender flares and a spoiler out of fiberglass. So they were surprised when a guy who they just hired off the street was able to work with fiberglass. Then I had to patch up a helmet from Planet of the Apes, and I managed to texture the Bondo to look like the leather it was made from. And they're like, "Wow, this guy knows what he's doing." And it was like, "Yeah, but I've been playing with this. Like I said, this is how I entertain myself." But yeah, basically it was starting out just working in the lab, or working in the mold shop, making molds, pouring the molds, cleaning them up, and either painting them or sending them off.
So that was precision effects?
Yeah, precision effects, correct.
What did they branch you out into after that?
And similar thing, got asked to do something. I had to make a paper mache blimp. Everyone was scared of this blimp. Actually, no, excuse me, not a blimp. It was a dirigible, looking like the Hindenburg. Everyone was scared of it. I didn't know what anyone was scared of. They say, here's a picture, here's the materials, build it. Oh, okay. You got molds, got ribs. All I need is some silk span, for making model airplanes, because I had done that. Built a frame, covered it with silk span, and it was like, how did he do that? And I'm enjoying myself. I'm loving this thing.
Uh-huh.
And they're just all amazed. It was a pyro model, I should say that. And apparently, when he set it on fire, I'm told it looked like a real dirigible going down. I've never seen the video of it though.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, a lot of people who are out there who are not in the film industry, they have their own techniques they've developed for themselves while doing their own cosplay, you know. And as well as I do. Back when we were younger, cosplay, what's that?
Yeah,
What you mean? Oh, you mean making a costume? That's what it's called. It's making costumes.
yeah,
But
that's what the nerdy people did.
yeah, but for me, I didn't care when back in high school, and it's like, what? These are the things I like. Deal with it. I don't care. Um, I was the one of the loners, as they would say, because I wasn't into the sports
Yep,
and stuff like
same
that.
here. Same here.
I was in drama class, whatever, you know. But uh, but all the interesting people were all the nerdy people,
Yeah,
and the people who were into drama and stuff like that. There's plenty of cheerleaders out there who were nerdy, but they were closet nerdy.
yeah.
So I always thought that was kind of funny at in classes is you'd have one of the cheerleaders who's always kind of prim and proper and so on, coming in and being part of the drama class, and then you see the side of her that she doesn't show to anybody else, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, she's good, I like her, we're good. um and once again, that's what I used to do, just like you. I was always building something in my garage. I was always building something at for school and stuff like that. I got into doing stop motion animation, building little sets and stuff. Um, I personally was lucky enough to have, once again, like at a comic book store. One of the owners was a guy who did special effects, and so I was brought in on weekends and stuff to help them make stuff. I was like,
Okay.
this is amazing. Great, thanks. Well, how would you do this? I do it like this. Oh, okay, then you go do that while we're working on the important stuff over here. You
It's
know,
funny you say that, Mike, because I actually learned that from you.
which
Oh, just okay. When I first started doing, when I got out of the mold room with it proper and started doing more of the stuff that was like the model work, I remember so often I would come to you and say, "Hey, Mike, how should I do this?" Or "What's this supposed to look like?" You kind of look at me, and go, "I don't know." I'm like, okay." So I go ahead and figure something out. Mike, how should I? Yeah, I don't know. You never really said, "Oh, well, it has to be X, Y, Z." You allowed me to make my own decision about how to do it. So after a while, I didn't need to ask anymore.
Right. And you see, that's the point. Is the people I personally like to work with is I uh I trust them. I wouldn't hire somebody to
Yeah.
do something if I didn't trust them to do the job. So I would rather, like, on, okay, on, for instance, on DS9. Okay, let's go way back into the dark ages here. Okay, so when I bring people in, we might have 8 different things we have to make for the show, you know, in less than 6 days. So, I'd give you a piece, I'd give Bear a piece, I'd give Max a piece, and so on. And whoever finished one piece got to move on to another piece. Um, I didn't have time to micromanage. I don't like to micromanage
Yeah.
unless there's a really specific thing
Yeah.
that it has to either do or have. Other
Yeah.
than that, it's like, here's the drawing. However you make that master is how it's going to work.
Yeah. And that's the way it should be. I mean, if you if you can't trust your people,
That's exactly the point.
what's the point? Oh, and I gotta say this. I gotta say, and this is once again for people who are doing the stuff in their garage. Some of the most I met a group of the most talented guys I've ever seen, and they did stuff out of their garage in Indianapolis.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, I mean, they did professional level stuff. And for a minute, I was amazed, but then I thought, well, why is that amazing? These are guys who love what they do. And when you like what you do, you're going to do a good job.
That's basically what it is. Everybody has a talent, and unless you allow it to blossom, you're
Yeah,
never going to know what it is.
yeah, absolutely. And that's what I've encouraged both my kids to do. I'm bragging on my son now. I know we're probably getting off topic. My son used to make us late when he was in high school. He used to make us late into the bus because he was playing video games. I told him, look, I don't care about you playing the game, but I'd rather see you be the one making the games.
Mhm.
Guess what he does for a living?
Right. There you go. So you nurtured his art form,
Yes,
and that's
yes,
and that's what they should be doing in all the schools now. I'm getting political now. That's what they should be doing in all the schools, is teaching the kids to do what they like. As far as, like, if they love cars, then why can't I'm not saying, create an entire curriculum for them, but, okay, so Jimmy and Bobby like cars. So let's teach them the math that they should know that deals with that type of stuff.
sure,
And
absolutely.
and you know, there's so here in California, there's so many schools that don't have um a any type of, like, auto class anymore,
Yeah,
or metal shop, or screen
yeah,
printing, or anything
yeah,
like that. So
yeah. That was
it's just,
sad.
it's the type of thing that, why so many people now who are in the fan community are doing all the things that used to be able to get taught in school.
Yeah,
So now you have groups of people getting together and teaching each other how to do things, which is great. That's the one thing I really like about the fandom, is that, in general, they're all good people
yeah,
in general.
yes. Well, it's like any endeavor. You got your guys that are like your people who are like, yeah, and the others are like, you go stand in that corner over there. I'll talk to you later. But most people I've met, yeah, oh, Yeah, birds of a feather and all that.
So what is here we're going to go back on the subject here.
Yes.
Okay, here's another question from somebody off the internet. I imagine that each of you have a favorite part of the process in making a prop, such as making the master, making molds, cleaning the parts up, painting, so on, so on, so on. What's your favorite part of the process?
Hmm. It's hard to say only because I don't see the process as, even though I know its steps, yeah, it's just I'm going from here to there.
So
So I love all.
so you have a linear thought process on it
Yeah.
instead of a I'm what once again like the mindset at most shops is you're a resin monkey
Yes.
and you're a paint monkey and you're a clay monkey and
And
so on.
I hated that. My I always loved it when I was handed a drawing, and from the drawing to the finished part, I did all of it.
Yeah,
That was the most fun for me.
yeah, that's actually it. The end result for me was also depending on if I was the one delivering it to set.
Yeah.
That in some cases that was like people, wow, that's really nice, or that can't possibly work, and then you show them how it works, and they go, oh,
Oh.
wow. So you guys actually were able to do all that in the time frame. Yes,
Yes.
we worked nights, which is true.
Well, yeah. Well, what I found, generally speaking, when I did things, I had a process, and I tried to arrange my process so each step led into the next one. I might, and yeah, first of all, I gotta excuse me. I've got allergies, but I cough instead of sneezing, so I have a coughing fit. Just bear with. Having said that, so I'm like, okay, I've got to do this over here, but this other section. So I'll put this together, let the bondo dry. Then while that's drying, I'll carve something else. And then when I get finished carving that, then I'll primer and then, or yeah, this has to be hollow. So while I'm waiting for this to happen, I'll hollow out this part. And hopefully when it's all done, then it all meets at one point. It's like, okay, now it's all ready to paint, throw it together. It confuses a lot of bosses because they look around and they see parts, and they come back a couple hours later and they see parts, and then they come back the next day and they see parts, and to them it doesn't look like you're doing anything.
Yep.
And
That's
then they'll leave and come back in 10 minutes, and then there's a finished piece, and they're like, oh, okay. But that's why I enjoy doing everything, because then I don't have to go back and account for, because I mean, I've had to work behind other people, and that can be really difficult because they may do something that doesn't account for what I have to do next. So now I've got to either go back and modify what they've done or try to account for it. And it can slow the process down. And like you said, when you're on a time schedule, you don't want to have to try to figure someone else's part out. And I've seen instances where three people work on one prop, we bring it all together, and nothing works. But to me, it kind of makes it a little more difficult.
yeah, yeah, that's true because it's always as far as some of those people are concerned, it's always easier to fix somebody else's problem than it is to do it right the first time, and they're wrong. It's always
Yes.
easier just to give it.
Yes.
It's always
Yes.
easier just give it to the person who's going to fix it in the first place,
Yeah.
and then go with that. Okay, so somebody wrote here, well, so working with the designers on the shows, Rick Sternbach, uh, Jim Martin, John Eves, and so on, as well as Bob Blackman from the costuming side and so on. Some people are asking always, was it difficult to interpret what they were asking you to do, whether it was on a drawing or descriptive, verbally descriptive?
No. However, the offset to that was I was always able to ask. John Eves and I got to be really good friends that way because he would draw something and I'd look at it and I'd get on the phone and say, hey, John, and whatever because very often the sketches are done quickly. There may not be a size reference. or a color reference or anything like that. So I have to call, get a clarification. And you go, oh, well, I was thinking this. Oh, okay, cool. I've never had a problem with that. I've always loved that. That was always really that was the fun part of it for me is being able to talk to the designer and find out what his thoughts were. Because if the more I know about what that prop is supposed to be and what it's supposed to do, the better the job I can do on it. Specifically because I know when you especially when you're working on a time schedule, I know what I can leave out, what I can ignore, what I can hide if I have to do that to get it done faster.
Right. Well, there's also the point is after you've worked on a show for a while, such as DS9, where you've got Klingons, Bajorans, Cardassians, and so on. One, you already have an idea of their style.
Right,
You also know what the color schemes are already, so you don't.
right.
So if there's something that you want to question, generally speaking, it was yeah, sure, just do. You know what the species is. Just paint their paint scheme onto it.
Yeah.
You know. So at times when I first started during Next Generation, I would be like, oh well, can I substitute this color? Sure. Why are you asking? Just do it.
Yeah.
But it's like, but you're in charge. I'm not. I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, well, to build on that, and keep in mind, obviously, Star Trek wasn't the only thing I did. I carried that mindset on to other things. Like now I do trade show props, and I always find it helpful. Yeah, so I've all, in fact, most of the shops I've worked at, if the designer wasn't at the shop, by and large, I've been able to talk to the designers at some point, be able to find out what they intended. But yeah, I've always found it helpful.
What were some of the difficulties that you faced in working as a prop maker in the beginning versus now? Because technically speaking, even though you're doing convention displays and so on, it's still prop making.
Right. The first thing was people not realizing what my skill level was. A lot of times people approach you with a preconceived idea of what you can do. So they may it's one of the things I've always ran into is getting pigeonholed. Oh, you only knew how to do this. Uh no, I know more than that. So that was the first thing. The second thing was people having unrealistic expectations in that, oh, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Oh,
unrealistic. Oh, can you get that done in an hour? It's a
yeah.
3-day
Uh,
job, guys.
oh, I can't. Oh, or the other one, and I think more shop owners get this one. Yeah, I want this prop. Oh, well, yeah, this prop is going to cost you $10,000, but I only have 500. And then maybe being told, okay, this guy only has $400. Um, okay, what do you want me to do? I mean, I can make it out of cardboard, or I can make it the way it's supposed to be made. What do you want? So it's being told, yeah, you've got to accommodate something that's like, yeah, I can accommodate that, but it's going to look like crap when I get it done. Is that what you want?
That is exactly, it's the eternal triangle. Good, fast, and cheap. Pick two.
Two, yeah,
That's ongoing, and that's in every industry,
yes, oh, very much so,
especially
very much.
custom stuff. One particular project are you particularly proud of?
Ah, I'm glad you asked me that because once again they fade into they've all faded into obscurity, and so it's hard because like I said, I enjoyed everything, but I did in fact, hold on, this thing, Opus Latinum brick.
Yep.
This is one of those things that I did the whole, well, except for the gold plating, of course. I did the whole thing. No one helped. They made like 100 of these things, and about 20 or 30 of them were gold plated, like this one. And the prop master and probably every producer on Star Trek has one of these. So that was a real ego boost. But then there are things I just have because I just like them.
Yeah.
But that was probably the biggest ego boost I've gotten.
One of the people's questions is, if you weren't a prop maker, what would your career be right now?
Whew. Well, I was actually trying to get into video. In fact, I went to school for video. I actually went to school. Well, actually, for a while, I was doing toy prototypes.
Uh-huh.
Uh, when I was in college, I was trying to get into the aircraft industry. I've been trying to get into building models ever since college. I was trying to get into Hughes because they had an art department. But if I probably would have been, like I said, I'm a trained graphic artist, so it would have been something in graphic design if things had gone the way I wanted to do. I'm not complaining. Don't get that twisted. But yeah, probably would have been doing something in graphic design. Latest class I took was CAD, so almost went into architecture.
And once again, all this stuff still ties into making stuff. So somebody wants to know, how has 3D printed affected the industry, especially since the technology is better and better? Is it destroying the talent pool?
Not destroying it, but changing it. In fact, this is the very reason I took AutoCAD. I was trying to transition into that. One of as I mentioned, I was doing toy prototypes for a moment, and I worked with a young lady who would draw the stuff on the computer, well and good, but she couldn't account for the internals. No, her job was to draw it. I'd make a mold. We had a wax machine that would grow the part. I'd make a mold. Then I had to make a hollow part, and then I had to figure out the internals. So my thinking was, well, shoot, you could have figured that out from the beginning. Now, this was, gosh, probably 20 years ago. So now, I'd say for the viewing audience, it's a godsend because you could do things that are far more complicated, far more detailed, and probably in about the same time, maybe a little less. The problem, however, is that there tends to be a gap. You've got the guy on the computer who's drawing it, and I don't mean this to sound derisive, but then you hand it to a monkey that sands it down and paints it.
Right.
So you don't have that guy who can like, oh, let me figure out how to put it together.
Okay. But here's the other thing is there's the people who've transitioned from actually building things into 3D, to me, have a better idea of
Yes.
what's necessary compared to the guy who was in school, who studied it, but has never built anything in his life. So he just goes, well, that's how it is. It's like, when they draw in the 3D a 1/8 inch hole that's supposed to have an 1/8 inch rod going through it. You can't do it. It's if you try and put that rod through that hole, you'll never get it back out again because there's no tolerance for the movement.
Yeah, they don't think about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the issue that I have with quite a few people who do 3D is they're not thinking like a builder. They're and or engineer per se.
Right.
They're just making something cool because on the screen you can animate it rolling perfectly fine on that axle, but in reality that axle's seized up and it's locked. You ain't going anywhere.
Yeah. So, like I said, that's why I want to, because several jobs I've had has been to go back. I've been the guy who sanded that 3D part. I've been the guy who's now had to take that 3D part, go into it with a drill, and make sure your 1/8 inch rod actually goes through that hole and
Right.
put it here. But I've actually heard from other people who are of the same attitude as yourself that, yeah, some guy draws on a computer and then never accounts for whether or not it actually fits together.
Exactly. And I have 3D printers here. You have one there with you. I as far as I know, you still have it.
Yeah, still have it.
Okay. And the point is you know if I know that I want to make it so it fits really tight, I may leave a little extra material that I'm going to naturally sand down anyway because I want to smooth it out. But then it will fit.
Yeah.
If you're doing
Now,
it on purpose, that's one thing. If you're doing it because you don't know, then that's kind of useless.
yeah. Well, I do have to say, currently I'm working with some guys who do get those concepts.
Uh-huh.
So when they do something, when they draw it out, it's going to work.
Cool.
And plus, I have access to them, so sometimes I can stand over their shoulder and say, "Hey, are you sure?" And they go, "Oh, okay." Or they'll even come ask me, "Hey, if
Uh-huh.
I do this, will it work?" Yes, yes, it will. Or no, no, it won't.
Exactly. Yeah, because if those numbers match exactly, they ain't happening. Okay, here's another question for you. What was something that you thought was so easy to do that ended up being the biggest pain in the butt?
There is no one project, but you just gave the formula for anything that's a pain in the butt. The simpler it is, the harder it is to do. The reason being is that when something is complicated, you can hide a mistake here and there, or you can compensate. But when it's something that's like, here, paint this thing green. Okay, um, there's dust specks in it, or it's not the right shade of green, or you got a fingerprint on it, or something. It's usually it's the just any simple thing that that tends to be the biggest problems. Conversely, some of the easiest projects are the ones that are ridiculously complicated, because then you're already thinking ahead when you're doing it. Because with the simple stuff, you just go, "Oh, all I got to do is this. Oops, that's not working.
Yeah.
I got to go back." And when it's simple, going backwards isn't always easy because, well, we'll take a paint job for example. You mess up a paint job, you're screwed because, and I actually had an employer who would do this. He would deliver prototypes with the paint literally still wet.
Yep. Uh-huh. Or or I would have someone who would come up and go, "Is
Is
this
this dry?
dry?" And instead of waiting for me to answer, they'd put their finger in it.
Oh, yep.
And
Yeah, I
and,
know who
and
you're
that
talking.
and that happened a lot on Star Trek. How hard is it? They were saying design, but in our case it's possibly design, but more than likely build props that haven't been invented yet for alien races.
Okay, that's sort of a, I won't say a trick question, but it's it's a two-edged sword. I mean, and I've actually considered this. The big thing is, what is an alien's what is their design concept? I mean, who how do you make it look alien? What's alien to a human being? Or anything that doesn't look human.
Yep.
So,
All about
well,
aesthetics, you know.
yeah, exactly. What's an alien
And, and
set?
and ergonomics. Do they have, you know, 8 fingers or 2 fingers or no fingers? You know.
Right. Now that being said, I've actually used stuff that, okay, it had a human aesthetic. I just painted it a weird color.
Yeah.
So it's not it's so but the it actually gives you a certain amount of freedom because when you design it or build it, who could say what's right or wrong?
Well, except for the prop master, the
Ex-
designer, the costumer.
yeah. In which
but
case then you
but in
say, yeah,
general,
yeah, yeah.
but
But then it's like, okay, usually in those cases they have a particular intent. Now I actually did have a prop. I had to make basically it was a Cardassian laser scalpel. What does a Cardassian laser scalpel look like? I don't know. So I just took some parts and I already kind of there was always already a certain design language that Cardassian props had. So okay, so I gave it that design language that had been established, painted it the proper colors, put my own spin on it, and there you go. The prop master was satisfied and it did what they wanted it to do.
how is the stress level when you're working on a production schedule like Star Trek?
At first, it was, well, okay, let me put it like this. There's two kinds of stress. There's good stress that just focuses you, and then there's bad stress that just pisses you off. I had gotten so used to, once I'd gotten used to it and I knew what to expect, the stress, yeah, there was stress, but it caused me to focus. And I figured out shortcuts. In fact, you were talking about the short production schedule. One of the things I started to notice And speaking of Joe Longo, God rest his soul, loved the man to death. Something he used to do, and I noticed, he would call me on a Friday. Say, Wendell, I need this prop. The following, okay, and almost without fail, he would call me on Wednesday and say, can I have this tomorrow? And then that's when your stress level goes up, like, oh no, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. But I started noticing the pattern. So when he called me on Friday, I'm like, you're going to call me Tuesday night or Wednesday, wanting it Thursday. So I built the prop as if it had to be done on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, one day Joe calls, yeah, they changed the schedule. Yeah, can we get this prop Thursday morning? I said, sure, Joe. In fact, it's ready. You can have it right now. This is Wednesday morning. Yeah, you can come pick it up now. It's done. Mm-hmm. But I knew that was going to happen. When you get to know the people that you work with, you can make allowances for that. Then with Alan Sims, it was the opposite. He would call me with a prop, and I never forget this one day. I was like, I had to call him. I said, Alan, I'm sorry. I cannot get this prop done when you need it. He was like, oh, no problem. I didn't need it till next week. Really? They told me, oh yeah, I always build 3 extra days into the schedule. Okay. Yep. Good to know.
Yep.
I mean, I thought that was hilarious, but yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious until you until you ended up changing all your plans for a weekend because you had to have it done, and then suddenly, oh yeah, I don't need it now. Like, oh okay, I was going to go to Disneyland with my kids for their birthday.
Well, it's not as bad as working all this prop, changing all your plans, and getting it done, and saying, oh, they wrote that out of the script.
Yeah, you're still going to pay for it though.
I didn't deal with money.
I did though.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the guys wants to know, so do you get upset when you see someone in fandom recreating what you've made for the show?
No, because I've been that guy.
Right.
I've been that guy. I am that guy. Look, in my garage is an alien's pulse rifle that I'm creating just because I want it. Is anyone could have been mad at me? I don't know. Well, no one knows. Well, now they know about it, but no. In fact, just the opposite. It's actually I'm actually flattered by it because what it says is that this person liked what you did, admired it enough that they wanted one, and they set out to do it themselves. So I'm actually flattered by the whole thing.
Well, what about people who are out who have gotten props from the show, whether they're screen used or not, and making molds and casting them and selling them out the back door? As they say, the back door, there is no back door. It's already gotten out.
Yeah. Once again, it's like I don't own any of this stuff. My job was to build a thing and get paid. I built it, I got paid. What happens to it after that is not on me. Their problem isn't with me. Their problem was with Paramount, Sony, Universal Studios, whatever studio that sees that thing out there and goes, hey, that's not yours to sell. So my attitude is, if you want to do that, that's your risk. But me, I got paid.
So, and then to add to this is, where is it? Do you collect props? Which you've already stated, yes. So, they just wanted to know, like, are you as a prop maker? Do you also collect props that you didn't make for a show?
Well, there's still that alien's pulse rifle. Didn't make that. I have a Mandalorian helmet. I mean, I didn't make the original Mandalorian helmet, although the one I'm making, I made from sheets of plastic. So do I collect props from other shows? Yes. And for the same reason anyone collects a prop from another show, because they like it, because they enjoy it. In fact, being a prop maker actually enhances that because I don't have to necessarily get a copy of it from someone else's mold. In fact, I find it far more fun and challenging, and I've had to do this professionally as well, to research the thing, take photographs, take measurements, scale them up or down, and then build it from there.
Going to conventions like you have, um, I find that you have the three types of people. You've got the people who are indifferent. You've got the uber, it's got to be perfect, and then you've got the third one is the people who made it look like it to get the point across of their costume. The some of the people that I always have a problem with is this is 100% accurate. Da, 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 da. And then when you walk up to them and they go, "What do you think of this?" "Oh, well, you made it half size and da, da." "Well, how would you know?" "Okay, I'm the guest.
I
You
only
know,
do this for a living.
argue with me if you want." And oh, and by the way, I'm the one who built that.
Yeah,
You know, and that's happened quite a bit. And I try and be diplomatic about it. But the point is when you've got a kid who's made his his phaser out of cardboard boxes and so on and tape and then painted it and is at a convention and here's a 40-year-old man going, "That's so inaccurate, it's horrible, blah, blah, blah." It's like, please stop. You should be being supportive
oh yeah,
of him
yeah,
because in the future he's going to be you, and I would rather have somebody being kind and helpful. I try and be as helpful as I can as long as I don't cross any boundaries of a non-disclosure that I may have
yeah,
signed at one time or another
oh yeah,
on any number of shows. And so I would rather help people because also here's the other thing is is if I died tomorrow, who would know what I know? If you don't
yeah,
pass it on to the next person or group of people, you don't it's going to die.
yeah. Yeah. That, my attitude is I've run into a few of those people
It's a trade
myself.
secret, by the way.
And like I said, if you decide sign a non-disclosure, sure you can't tell. But I've had people, "Oh, well, yeah, absolutely," and I'm like, look, hold up. In fact, I was doing a tricorder, and speaking with the guy, well, it has to be like this, and it has to be absolutely perfect. I'm like, no, wait a minute. Here's my attitude. Museum piece. Represent the best, because there's whatever it is. There may be 3 or 4 different versions of it. Take the best, build something that will represent what it's supposed to be. But other than that, if you're stressing out to the point where it stops being fun, what's the point? Because the whole point of
Exactly.
building it is that it's supposed to be fun.
Yes, that's it.
So I tell people if they're stressing about something like, did you have fun? Yeah. What else is there? Enjoy it.
Right. And the point is like when they ask me questions or ask you questions, like this is what I remember, or oh, here's a photo of X, Y, and Z. And as you notice here, you didn't do the curve like that. You did it like this, which this looks fine, but and some of those people, once again, are perfectionists, so they're going to go, I have to rebuild the entire thing. It's like, why just change that? Well, no, no, no. I want to redo it because that's all and once again, as they say, that's all the fun in it is recreating it. And
Yeah.
it's
But
like,
what they
then have fun. That's
yeah,
fine.
because what they don't realize, and we've been saying this all along, you're under a deadline.
Yeah.
So you don't. A lot of this stuff isn't necessarily calculated. It's like, okay, I need to radius this corner. Where's the sander? Zzz, done.
Right. And some people, I've had the unfortunate. Some people would say, "Oh, well, this is more accurate than the original."
That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And or in some cases, it's like they're looking at one of the props on display at a show, and they're like, "Oh yeah, look, you've got some small air bubbles here and blah blah blah." And I go, "Okay, how long did it take you to make yours?" "Oh, I've been working on this for 3 years." "Oh, this was made in less than 6 days."
Yeah,
"Well, there's no way you could make that in 6 days." Here it is.
there is, I have, and I'll do it again tomorrow.
Exactly. Well, we've already actually answered this question, but we'll do it again. How does one finish on time with the incredible short deadlines for new and bulk props
Planning.
and technique?
Actually, the simplest way, and this is one of the things a lot of people don't realize, I don't think, not every prop is built from scratch. Case in point, there was a show on, God, what was the name of it? I can't remember. The concept of the show is they found an alternate Earth, but it was back in the Jurassic period. Terra Nova. Modern look, it was set like the 22nd century. Modern, futuristic guns. They were Nerf guns painted black.
Yep.
I mean, because sometimes you don't have time to do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sometimes you put on you might stick on a piece of tubing, flex tube, and
yep.
some duct tape and psh,
So more often than not, you would find things that are already existing and just modify it. If assuming that there isn't something specific that the designer or the production company wants. Um, in fact, I've actually kind of gotten in a little bit of trouble because I'm trying to manufacture something from a block of wood, and someone says, "No, no, no, just take that thing over there and paint it black." Okay, but in order to make the schedule, that's what you have to do sometimes. It doesn't always make for the most satisfying results, but once again, when you're doing it for yourself, it's a different priority. Then you can take the time, you can spend the 3 weeks chasing that scratch. But when it's got to be there tomorrow, can't do that.
and see that's the thing that people miss is that when you're doing a job, you're still an artist, but you're a artist on a schedule. If you're doing it for yourself, however lofty your expectations are, is fine. But when you're doing a thing for a show, you have to bring that expectation level down because
Yes.
there's no way you can reach that level in the amount of time that you have unless you've got some special movie that's going to be shooting for 3 years and you're going to make, if it takes you 8 months to make the part, great. But I don't know of any shows that were like that.
No. No. In
I
fact,
haven't worked on I worked on The Hobbit, okay, and that was over like 3 years in the making, and I only worked on it for a short amount of time. But the point is you still have a shooting schedule because they're shooting every day. So no matter what happens, you still don't have that amount of time on that big of a show.
yeah. One of the things I think that people would find surprising, and at first I did, was, well, okay, on television, when a television show is making fun of itself,
Yeah,
the tropes are always depicted as being cheesy looking. And a lot of people don't realize that in real life, a lot of them are cheesy looking.
yeah,
Uh,
especially for earlier shows.
sure.
I think actually Star Trek started raising the bar
Yeah.
on the quality and finishes and design work
Yeah.
compared to earlier shows.
Oh, absolutely. But even with that, because of the time, I mean, I've come across things that are like they're crooked, it's not even, blah 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 blah. Of course, it was probably a stunt one, but and it wasn't until I started being the one doing it that it's like, oh, that's why it looks like that. But the magic of motion pictures, the magic of television, is because you never get to see that thing close up. Your mind takes over.
It fills in.
It fills in the gaps. So that thing you look at, that wonderful, beautiful, high-tech looking, whatever it is, in reality, it may not be that high-tech looking, but I think people will sometimes lose sight of that because it looks so cool. Well, yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
But the poor guy did it. He'll probably only had, 6 days to do it.
If they're lucky.
If they're lucky.
So another question is there an artist who inspires you, and does it have influence on your work? And this can be for film work as well as personal.
Well, I'm a big fan of Sid Mead. Love his stuff.
Yep.
I've always loved it as a kid. But having said that, there are, gosh, not all of them I know by name, but a lot, well, John Eves. And it was just to blow my mind of the stuff that John could draw, and I was like, wow, dude. I mean, I used to tell him, dude, I want to be you when I grow up.
Yeah, and where did you pull that out of?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, there between that, actually one of the artists that's really gotten me more excited has been Frank Lloyd Wright. Especially after I took architecture. You look at the stuff he's designed, and you're like, how did you even think of that? It's like where in your mind did that grow?
Yeah.
The guy who did Aliens, um, the Necromancer.
Oh, Giger.
Giger, yeah, twisted stuff, but beautiful work. And you look at like, okay, what nightmare did that come from? Well, wow, look at that artwork.
Yep. Yeah. No, he had some very imaginative things and stuff that he went places that people were afraid to go, and that's why it was so successful.
Yeah, and there's a place for it. I mean, talking about aliens, as you could probably be beginning to get the idea, I actually enjoyed that show. And this also goes back to an earlier question about alien aesthetics. What does an alien aesthetic look like? Well, here was a guy who was able to figure that out and show it to us. Yeah. And when you show people what something looks like without it looking, well, you can show people an alien aesthetic without it looking like something someone just took and painted purple. That's it's amazing. It's exhilarating.
It's creating.
Yes.
Creation. And see, that's the thing too, is oh, well, we've created this, and some people are going to go, what is that? And other people are going to go, wow, that's a different view, but I like it.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of, he stepped out of the norm.
Yeah.
To help, at this point, inspire a lot of new artists to step outside the box. And that's what I think it is each of the people that, as you're going through things, you kind of go, yeah, he was in the box and he stepped out of it and then to another box and to another box and to another box.
Yeah.
And then he blew the box up. And there's so many artists nowadays that are doing that, that he's inspired, and among other people as well. There's a lot of people who are inspired by things, who are now in the position of being the designers for these new shows.
Yeah.
And they're taking all these things to the next level.
Well, they discovered that there is no box.
Yes.
And that's I think is I say this because someone moved my okay. I think that's the thing that you really want to use to inspire people is to convince them that look, there is no box. It's easy to copy someone else's stuff. I mean, that doesn't take any imagination. It takes a certain amount of skill, but not necessarily imagination or creation. But when you can ignore the box, realize there isn't one, and just go for it, man, and that's what makes you special.
Okay. So here's one. Did you ever build something solely for your own amusement that was then used in a production?
Yes, Klingon dagger. In fact, you should remember that because I built it at Proper. The vaguely, but yeah, I remember I wanted one of the working Klingon daggers, set it up on the mill, built it, took it home.
Okay, now I remember which one.
Yeah, now you remember. Fast forward about 5 years, Joe Longo needed a working one. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he never had one or what. And Paul wanted to charge him $800 for one. He was like, well, I can't afford that. And I was like, say, Joe, tell you what, I've got one. I'll let you use it. Just bring it back. He was like, cool. So I lent him the knife. He used it, brought it back. It was all coated with all that stuff because I had it really highly polished. I mean, it was mirror finished. So it came back with all the schmutz on it. As far as I know, all that schmutz is still on it. I never wiped it off. Because now I can say, okay, I got my knife back. And it's screen used.
Yep. Exactly. And that's the thing is as a collector or as a archivist or anything else is okay, leave it alone. Unless you're going to use it again for something else on the show, just leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Because that what for me, see, that's like, oh, there's a memory attached to that now.
There's a story.
Yeah.
I gotta think about that one. I didn't see that question. You blindsided me. I think it was a spatula. I don't remember what it was. I've seen a broom turned into a plow.
I remember that. Yeah.
Almost turned a lid of a diaper pail into a backpack, but that didn't happen.
As well as let's see here. What was your most disastrous experience while creating a prop?
Well, this is interesting. It wasn't create. Oh, yeah. There was a movie called Chill Factor. Now keep in mind, I didn't do all this by myself, but I ended up kind of being the center point for all this. The prop was basically a cylinder that held some kind of biotoxin. It was supposed to be a thermos, long story short. And it had a thermometer on top. It basically was just a 4-digit counter. I didn't always do all the electronics. We had people who did that. You remember Brian and a few other people. Well, none of them were available. We got some random guy that the shop office manager knew. He built the thing. It worked, but barely. Well, because it worked so poorly, when we sent it to the production company, which was they were in Utah, they wanted to have someone sent out to babysit this prop, and I got the job. Well, in order to get this thing, the problem with the connectors was so wanky that once you set the number, if you didn't disconnect all the control cables in the proper order, it would reset the numbers. So to get the prop to work, usually took about an hour of fiddling with it, making sure the batteries were charged, making sure you had the number that was supposed to be displayed in the scene that particular day. And on top of that, the numbers were so dim you couldn't see them. So I also had the added job of making the numbers bright, which I did do. This one day, they're on this bridge in Utah. Actually, they're at the edge of a lake. It's because there's a dam on the Green River. And they're on the lake that is behind the dam. Now, the prop isn't on the schedule for this particular day. So I'm in the prop truck, I'm working, I'm kind of doing all the maintenance work. And I decide, okay, I'm going to go to set and see what's going on. I get to set just in time to see the assistant prop master trying to sprint up a 30-degree incline. And this was not a little guy, it was a big guy. He sees me, and the prop was called Elvis. We need Elvis! We need Elvis! The director just called for Elvis! I'm like, oh no. I managed to find the van driver, and the prop truck and the set are like a mile away. We go back to the prop truck. I get the prop, and I'm at the edge of the lake with 300 people, the director, and the 2 stars of the show all watching me struggling trying to get this thing work. And the director decides he's going to give me a hard time. Mike, I tell you, if I could have, I would have thrown that prop at him. And it was ribbed, so I could have got a nice spiral on it. It was all I could do to grit my teeth and finally say, look, dude, I can't get this to work. I figured he just wanted to go home early and he wanted to have someone to blame, and I got to be the scapegoat. But that of all the things, that was probably the worst. I've never had anything that bad.
Yeah. I've had a few of those myself as well, especially on set. That's why I didn't like to go to set, because whatever can go wrong is going to go wrong. No matter what you do, you could have everything set up. When you're dealing with, are you the only person handling this, or are there 50 other people who are going to handle it and then hand it to the actors? Like, guys, don't touch it. I'll hand it to the actor, so I can guarantee that it isn't going to be, messed with.
Yeah, thankfully that only happened once in my entire career. Every other time, in fact, I knew I was having a good day when I was bored, because it meant nothing was going wrong.
So some people are asking, did you frequent thrift stores and toy stores to get components for the props?
Mostly toy stores.
Yep.
Because like I said, you for a lot of things, it was, oh, yeah, just, buy a cheap toy, whatever. Or sometimes it was, we need something to move. Oh, here's a toy. In fact, I learned that doing toy prototypes.
Yep.
You're trying to create a mechanism, and one of the places I worked had a stockpile of toys for you to pull mechanisms out of. So, oh yeah, thrift stores, yeah, occasionally. So goes back to doing what you got to do.
Some people are asking, why weren't there more LCD screens used in DS9 and next gen?
Oh, that's an easy one. It's two simple answers. One, they were fabulously expensive back then. This was 20 years ago. I mean, you can go to Walmart, buy an LCD TV screen, 1080 DPI, and pay $50 for it. That same screen back in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was going to be $2,000 or $3,000.
Yeah. I mean, when we did when we were doing Sequest, we were doing the little laptop computer playback screen, and those were $1,800 for a screen that was, I think, maybe a 4-inch diagonal screen with active matrix. And this was when active matrix was just starting to come down. 2 years earlier, that same screen was over $8,000.
Yeah. Oh, I remember there's a prop I built where, same thing, we bought a little tiny color TV set. I pulled the guts out of the TV set, squeezed it into the prop, but that TV set was about $400, and it was a screen that was about 3 inches square. Technology at the time was expensive. Now it's cheap, and it's gotten better.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like when people are asking about why were all of them just red, green, and yellow lights?
because a blue LED cost $10.
No. At that point, it was $1,000.
Wow.
Blue LEDs. those were all prototype LEDs that we're getting from the company to
Oh,
test.
see, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Because we were constantly being told, can you put a blue light here? It's like, okay, here's a piece of blue plex
Yeah,
with an
deal with it.
with an incandescent bulb in the back. Oh, well, why don't these lights last that long? When you're backlighting graphics, it's like, well, because we're using incandescent bulbs. Whereas now, you go over to the electronics store and it's like, oh, so I need like a 1200 millicandela white LED, and they're like, oh, okay, those are 35 cents a piece. In the 5th season, I ended up getting from somebody that I knew. I ended up getting some prototype white LEDs, and they were 100 millicandelas. Now, during that time, the greens, the reds, and the yellows. The reds were the brightest, but during that time, you were lucky if you got 35 millicandelas by cranking the voltage up on those LEDs. So they're only going to last constant on for about like maybe a week, But it flashing, saved its life for a couple of years. But all these things, it's like technology, yes, guys, is good and it's come forward. It's allowed us to do so many things, but not so much. It's technology is the flows is what it is. But once again, Star Trek. Once again, inspiration for the iPad, inspiration for cell phone. Everybody always asks questions of what was your favorite prop of all time that you've worked on. And I always have to ask, from what show?
Yeah.
Are you talking about Star Trek? Are you talking about, Space Above and Beyond? Are you talking about blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah?
Because
So
it changes according to, like you said, the show or the why or the how. I mean, okay, you just as you. Speaking of which, ta-da!
uh-huh,
Because it was gold.
uh-huh.
And yes, I made this 20 years ago, and it shows that it was made 20 years ago.
Yeah,
But I love this thing.
I still have the master for that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, including the backpack.
I still have a backpack, but that's because hold on. That's because I just enjoyed it. But this is also a favorite, not because I did the whole thing. I was responsible. Let me back up. I was only responsible for this much of the phaser rifle.
Uh-huh.
Because what John Eves loves his work, what he designed was like, John, what were you thinking? I won't say what we all thought it looked like, but
Well, when
and
you have to do it overnight,
yeah. So everyone was so like Bear at the time told everyone, look, go home, design something, bring it back, and we'll pick the best one. So this got picked. So this is also an ego boost for me because now anytime you see a phaser rifle on Star Trek or from Next Gen or from that era, it's always one of these. In fact, they even started using them on Voyager.
Yes, they did.
But for me, it's a lot of times it's the ego boost, and as you've already alluded to, it's for different reasons. Either because you had to overcome some problem, or because it was really cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing about some people are designers and so on. A lot of them get a bad rap because of the fact that they're artists, so they have moods and they have da da and it's like, guys, they're just people, and everybody has their own way of dealing with life.
Yeah.
Once again, if you're going to hire somebody to do a job for you, that's what the word is, for you. So here you go. Go do it. Not, oh, well, can you take a 60 thousandths off this little edge here and rotate it, by 1 degree. And so that's
I met that guy.
yeah. But most designers on all shows are like, yes, something like that. Whatever you give me is what's good. Because in many cases, like with John Eves and Rick Sternbach and Robert Delgado and so on. Yeah, it's a concept. It's like when we would get those really just basic sketches on Trek, and there'd be like 5 or 6 of them on the page, and Joe would go, that one, and you go, oh, okay, are we getting other drawings of that? No, just build that. Okay. And from that point on, it was like, okay, so what race is it? Blah blah blah. Let's just go.
Oh,
Those are the ones I enjoyed the most personally.
yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, Joe said something to me once, and I've appreciated him saying it. It doesn't have to look like the picture. It just has to look like it's worth the money I spent on it.
Right. I found that when I was the person going down to hear the description of what it was and get the drawing from whoever the designer was and go over it with Joe, I'm the first-hand knowledge. It would be, okay, no, I want to know because I have to build it, or I have to make sure somebody else is building it the right way so that
Yeah.
it'll be on set. And
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
that's where it really comes down to is, what is it? What does the prop master expect?
Yeah. Well, by the time I started being the one who was in charge of making sure it got built, it changed a little bit. So what happens? We get a fax from John Eves. It usually a quick note is build this. Okay. Whereupon I call him. So that there didn't need to be a whole lot of discussion, which made it easy because like, okay, I know what I need.
With Joe, it wasn't that difficult to give him what he wanted,
Yes.
as long as you got the information of what he wanted.
Yeah. And for me, it was being able to cut people out of the loop.
Exactly. No middle people. Joe was not someone that was difficult to work with, in my opinion.
No.
I got along with him. I got along with everybody that I could, because I don't, I don't need the drama. So why would I bother trying to create some, which is
Right.
what other people used to do all the time. So
Well,
in general, uh, you know, once, like you said, once you know how somebody is, you can work around those things that aren't working to make
yeah.
everything just work the way it's supposed to.
Right. Well, I'll even take you one better. You have to think the way your client is thinking. One of the things I learned working in the corporate world is, this is your customer. You've got to satisfy your customer. If you don't satisfy your customer, he's not coming back. So when you're building a prop, you have to think in terms of, okay, as we've been alluding to, I'm getting paid to do this. I have to give the client what he wants. If he doesn't get it, he's just going to take his business elsewhere.
Exactly. What materials do you make the prop out of?
Yes.
And it's like, well, that all depends on what you're making. You know,
And
so so basically, I think the question would be is, so how do you determine what materials you're going to use? Is what the question
it
should.
depends. Yeah, it depends on what the prop has to do. If it's something that's going to just sit statically on a table, you can just make it out of foam, coat it with epoxy, and paint it. Boom, you're done. If it's got to take some amount of abuse, you may have to make the thing out of steel. But yeah, it depends upon the purpose the prop is gonna serve. If I want to put lights in it, I would do it out of styrene and do a vacuum form, because then I have more room to put batteries and electronics and whatnot in it. If it has to be, extremely flexible, maybe it's fabric, maybe it's wood, but generally speaking, plastic, plexiglass, styrene, because those are the easiest materials to glue together. If it's a bladed weapon, aluminum.
So this is the last question, and it's not on this list. Here's a curveball. It's not really a curveball. What would you recommend that they learn to build props?
Actually,
Meaning,
that's not.
meaning, what it would it be? Classes? Would it be learning 3D? Would it be learning, woodworking? Would it be?
Yeah, that's not that difficult to answer. Okay, first and foremost, math. Know how to do math, because which will bring you to the second thing, and as it's going to sound weird, but trigonometry. And it's not that difficult because you sometimes get a picture. How big is that thing? I don't know. Well, you find something in the picture that's the right size, you measure it, you scale it up, boom. There's your math. After that, what adhesives adhere what material to another? One of the things I used to run into a lot was people bringing me polypropylene and want me to glue to it. And unless you've worked with it, a lot of people don't realize nothing glues to polypropylene except maybe hot melt. And that's only because
only barely.
and only barely. So it's literally what you can use to stick to what. Beyond that, then it depends on what it is you're trying to build. In which case, then let me put it like this: everything I learned about prop making, I learned from just building my own models and applying techniques from other other disciplines. I learned about fiberglass from looking at hot rod magazines. I learned about doing soft things from sewing. I used to hang out in libraries. Now you've got YouTube. Find a subject, find a YouTube video, and watch to see how somebody does it. What I started doing this, I'm speaking to the choir, we didn't have the internet. Now you've got the internet was there. I take it back. The internet was there, but it wasn't as readily accessible as it is now. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. Well, we had cell phones, but they were smartphones. Now, people need to realize you're walking around with a little device in your hand, and the sum total of knowledge in the entire world is at your fingertips. Look it up online. Google it. Look up a YouTube video. I drive one of those fancy computer-controlled cars. Something goes wrong, I'm on YouTube. How do I replace the rear axle bearing in a 2007 Cadillac STS? And yes, that's what I'm going to be doing Wednesday. I will be reviewing the YouTube video. The knowledge is out there. Find people who are already doing it. Ask them, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
Some craft stores will have classes. Go. Some hardware stores will have classes. Go. The knowledge is out there. You just got to look for it.
Right. And also just make sure that somebody's just not trying to mess with you and tell you to do something stupid.
Right. Little common sense.
Yeah. So always also look at the comments in the videos to make sure that somebody's not trying to harm you, because there are quite a few people out there who, show you how they're doing something, and they're not showing you actually what they're doing. They're just showing you
the end result. Yeah.
The end result, and then they tell you some cockamamie story. So you just got, do your research. In other words.
Yes. Start small, build upon each layer of knowledge.
Yes, and having a variety of knowledge will help you on every project. That's the one thing that, like, when I work with people and I bring them in, I don't want someone who only knows how to do one thing. I want somebody, maybe they're really good at that one thing, but I want them to have a general knowledge of some of the other things, so that I'm not going to hire them for 2 days and then they're gone.
Yeah, because they can't do anything.
Yeah.
Maybe we've gotten off topic. I kind of run into the opposite sometimes, because sometimes people are surprised by how many things I can do.
Right. And that's the point, though, is I would rather have a jack of all trades and master of none than to have a master of one and can't help me with the rest of it. As well as too is but I also don't want someone who's going to go, oh, I know how to do it, just let me do it. I know how to do it, and they're just fresh off of the bus from Hoboken or whatever. Not that there's anything bad with
No, I get it. Yeah.
It's just people. There's a lot of people who say they can do stuff, and then suddenly can't.
Yep.
And that's a problem. If you don't know how to do something, that's fine. If I've hired you and you don't know how to do that, please come and ask. And if there is time to show you, then you get shown. Increase your knowledge. That's the whole point.
Because I'll go to a job and say, look, can you show me how to do that? I've got the basic idea.
Yeah, and in some cases, it's I know how to do it how I would do it, how do you want me to do it for you?
Exactly.
You know, and
Exactly.
that's the thing is I'm sorry, but don't also, guys out there, I'm not interested in seeing a portfolio that actually has my own pictures in it. Because I've had that quite a few times. People showing up with pictures of stuff that I've built, and in some cases, a picture I've put up on the internet to show somebody something, and they show up with the photo in their portfolio, and I have to literally say, I don't remember you sitting next to me while I was making that, when they claimed that they worked at a shop that I did, especially a shop that I was the foreman at, as well as the vice president of the company. So, any words of wisdom for everybody out there?
Do what you love. Everything else will follow. Simple as that.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome.